Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another ship fitting guide for EVE Echoes. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Brutix, which is one of the Gallente battlecruisers, and apparently, according to my comment section, quite a popular one, as a lot of you guys have been asking about this one pretty much since Tech 8 dropped. This is kind of the Gallente's version of the Hurricane, or the Harbinger, or indeed the Ferox. So we're going to have a look at this one, and I am going to be showcasing this mainly with snub-nosed railguns, because hey, snub-nosed are an awful lot of fun, let's be completely honest. Now of course this video is being filmed on the Fulmination Content Creator Test server. That means I'm able to build anything I want as I want with the fittings I need. I'm at full 555 skills across the board. Doesn't benefit me at all in live though, just gives me the opportunity to play around with things and not worry about losing them. Anyway, if you do enjoy this video, let me know by hitting a like on it, sub to the channel for all things EVE Echoes, ding that notification bell so that you never miss an upload, and let me know in the comment section down below what ships, what topics you want me to cover in future videos. As I now have access to this Fulmination test server, if you do have a particular request, I should be able to fulfill it a lot quicker, and I can actually even look at some of the ships that are not currently available on the live server, as I'm sure you've seen with some of the videos like the Can You battlecruiser, etc. that I've put out. Now, if you are wanting to go the extra mile to help support this channel, you can do so by joining us on Patreon. Every pledge, every dollar really does help keep this channel going, and we now have a merchandise store on Redbubble, so if you've ever fancied representing the Catskill Cartel or getting yourself some cool Captain Benzie merch, have a check out on that link in the description below as well. Your first order on Redbubble does get a 10% off everything, and there are new designs in my shop coming very soon. That said and done then, let's talk about the Gallente Brutix. The Brutix is the Gallente Federation mainline Tech 8 battlecruiser. That puts it kind of on par with the Amar Harbinger, the Minmatar Hurricane, and the Caldari Ferox. So if we head to Tech 8 of the battlecruiser branch here on the Gallente Federation ship tree, we can find the Brutix. And brute is definitely the word. This ship is an absolute behemoth. You can see that this thing just, I don't know, it looks mean. It is thick, it is powerful. This thing just looks like it asserts dominance. Everything there is right up at the front, and it just looks like it means business. And if we check out the attributes and fittings, that definitely carries across. We've got one drone tube, small or medium drones can be launched from it. We've got a monstrous 7 high slots, 3 mid slots, 5 low slots, 3 power grid rigs, and 3 mechanical rigs. Now, on the power grid output of the Brutix, 1067 megawatts is fairly sizable. That gives us a lot of variety and a lot of legroom to work with when we're fitting the Brutix. We can come up with all kinds of different fits and do all kinds of different crazy things with it. Defensively speaking, the Brutix is also fairly tanky, 28,214 of basic, most of which is in the structure and the armour. 8,293 in structure, 8,131 in armour. So this is one of those things I kind of would turn around and say that actually you could probably structure tank this if you wanted to try it, but I would still personally go with armour tanking this, especially when we look at the spread of resistances here. You can see that as a Gallente ship, we are getting a bonus to the kinetic resistances, 36.25 kinetic resistance there on the armour. Shields are a little bit weaker, as you would expect being a Gallente ship. They tend to focus on the armour tank, 6,741. Again though, we do get a nice bonus there to the kinetic, 46% kinetic resistance on the shields. Fairly tanky ship, most definitely an armour tank though, and we'll see later that there are other clues that we are definitely going to be armour tanking this thing. Now, capacitors are fairly stable, fairly decent capacitor recharge rate. This isn't going to have too many problems in regards to capacitor stability. Looking at the signature radius and the flight velocity, 182 meters per second is actually on the faster end of battlecruisers, although a signature radius of 236.5 means, again, you are definitely a large target. People are not going to have any difficulties locking onto you and applying good damage. You are easy to lock, easy to hit when you're in a Brutix. Scan resolution of 222 isn't abysmal either. It's about middling for a battlecruiser. Certainly it's on the slower end of things, but as far as battlecruisers and battleships go, it is sort of on the middling to better end of that scale. Looking at the mass and the inertia modifier though, this is a tanky ship. There is a lot of inertia there. You are going to be fairly slow to accelerate and decelerate, and coming to a new heading is going to take some time as well. Certainly, again, it's on the better side of battlecruisers. There are slower, but it is still a very heavy battlecruiser. I mean, especially compare that to something like a Hurricane. If we then look at the trait description of the Brutix, we have the typical mainline battlecruiser roll bonuses here, the 25% increase to the accuracy fall-off and optimal range of the medium weapon system of choice. Obviously with the Hurricane that was cannons, with the Harbinger that was lasers, and just like with the Ferox, the Brutix gets medium railgun optimal range and medium railgun accuracy fall-off. Now at that point I would normally start talking about rifled railguns, but we are going to be having a look actually at a snub-nosed railguns build, spoiler alert, in just a moment. Now the reason I say I'd normally talk about rifled railguns is because when you get a bonus to something and you've got an option between two different varieties of that something that could receive the bonus, I tend to lean towards the one that gets the bigger total output from it. So for example, if you're getting 25% additional medium railgun optimal range, would you rather you were getting 25% increase to an optimal range of 5 kilometers or a 25% increase to an optimal range of 50 kilometers? One of those is a lot bigger than the other in what the bonus actually represents. So that's why I'd normally go rifled, but we are going to look at a snub-nosed build. And why are we going to look at a snub-nosed build? Basically because of the advanced medium railgun upgrade bonus here on the ship. The 6% medium railgun damage is always nice. Obviously a 30% increase to medium railgun damage is always going to be a nice thing, even if you're using rifled, but a 5% increase here to medium railgun tracking speed. This means that the already fast tracking speed of the snub-nosed railguns gets an additional 25% bonus at full advanced medium railgun upgrade 5, and again, I like to try and lean into the ship's bonuses where possible. If you want to use rifled railguns, honestly, that's where I'd be looking at sticking with the Ferox, but the Brutix here definitely feels as if it's more about that up close and personal tank and spank sort of brawling build. This is then exemplified by the battlecruiser command bonus here, a 7.5% increase to armor repairer efficiency. Obviously that's a 37.5% increase across the board there to how well your armor repairers work. So if you're going to have an armor repairer working constantly, the Brutix is going to be a good way of doing it. This means that that armor repairer can run constantly and it is going to be repairing more. It's all about keeping you alive, and if you've got an armor repairer going that often, chances are it's because you are up close rather than at range, because obviously being at range is going to mitigate the damage. So I'm merely looking at the bonuses here and saying we've got a tracking speed bonus and we've got armor repairer, let's go for a tank and spank, up close and personal Captain Benzie special brawler build. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to have a look at a Captain Benzie special, up close and personal, tank and spank, in your face, snub-nosed railgun brawling build, and whew, that is quite the mouthful. Now of course you can fit the Brutix for range, you can use rifled railguns. If that's what you want to try out, go to my Ferox video, copy the fit that you see there exactly. Just swap anything that is shield related for armor related. So shield boosters, swap for armor repairers, adaptive invulnerability fields, swap for armor hardeners, and same again with the rigs. If it's a shield rig, swap it for an armor rig. Now, as I said, we're going to have a look here at that brawling build using snub-nosed railguns. And I know that some of you folks in the comments section have said that you would like to see further buffs to snub-nosed, and I'll be completely honest, I disagree. I think that the buffs we received to snub-nosed railguns recently were pretty good. We've got incredibly high damage now from snub-nosed railguns. The range is good enough that most of the ships that are supposed to use snub-nosed railguns can maintain that range really well and effectively, and it gives you now that choice of, do you go for the safety of long-range rifled, or do you go for the extra damage of snub-nosed? And I saw someone in the comment section had mentioned that, oh, there are no PvP fits that use snub-nosed, and I'm sitting there thinking, have you not seen the Catalyst Catalyst Navy issue? Have you not seen the snub-nosed Daredevil builds? Yeah, I prefer a rifled railgun Daredevil, but I have seen some monstrous snub-nosed railgun Daredevil kills, and the damage they can kick out is terrifying. But anyway, we're getting off topic. Back to the Brutix. Medium snub-nosed railguns, in this case Corellum C-type medium snub-nosed railguns. The advantage, of course, is that monstrous damage, 150 DPS, 214 on thermal, 350 on kinetic. These, of course, are pretty good against both shield and armor tanks. They will do slightly better against armor tanks because most of the damage is in kinetic, but the shield tank there, you have the thermal damage to help you punch through that. The downside of a snub-nosed railgun comes, of course, in regards to its range. Optimal range here, with skills, with fittings, with rigs, with everything that I've got on this ship, 5.63 kilometers. You do really need to be close enough that you can wave out of the viewports and see the opposing capsuleer. Obviously, the accuracy fall-off here is not much better either, 8.1 kilometers. For a cruiser, you're looking at accuracy here, 100% at 5 kilometers, dropping very quickly to 50% by the time you hit 13 kilometers, and then all the way into absolute uselessness at about 21 kilometers. That is very short range, but it means, yes, you can start opening fire at 21 kilometers. Obviously, you want to try and be as close to that 5 kilometer mark as possible. Tracking speed, though, is very good. 94.38 is fantastic for a medium turret system. That is very good tracking. It means you can get right up into someone's grill and you will still be able to hit the small and faster moving targets. If you want to take out interceptors, these are the weapons with which to do that. Speaking of interceptors though, if you do need that little bit of extra punch there, a warp scrambler will switch off its micro warp drive, and a stasis web of fire will drop its flight velocity well enough for you to be able to make sure that those snub-nosed are not just getting grazes, but are getting penetrates and smashes and absolutely blapping those ships out of existence. Now, because we are going to be so close, and because of course we've seen that the Brutix has bonuses to armor repairers, we are going to have a medium energy Nosferatu fitted onto here that is going to allow us to transfer power grid out of their capacitor and into our own. This, of course, is beneficial. It allows us to maintain capacitor stability whilst running a lot of capacitor-intensive systems. For example, we have a Corpum C-type medium armor repairer and 2 Corpus C-type adaptive armor hardeners. Now, I'm going to put a bit of footage on screen here. I was trying to do some of the Tech 10 encounters with the Brutix, and I decided that 1 adaptive armor hardener just wasn't good enough. 2 of them does really seem to add a lot of survivability here to the Brutix. If you're going up against certain encounters though, if for example you're going up against something like the Amar encounters, and thus, you know, that little bit extra armor tank doesn't matter because the lasers are so pathetic against armor tank ships, you can swap that second armor hardener out for another one of your weapon upgrades. Now here I've got a Corellum C-type magnetic field stabilizer. Obviously you can have 2 of these on there if you're going up against the Amar ones and you're not anticipating having a lot of damage to your armor. Now, the advantage of these obviously comes in the form of that damage bonus and the activation time adjustment. Having a magnetic field stabilizer fitted increases the DPS of your ship. You can then activate it for a further boost thanks to the additional 9% damage bonus and the 400% increase to the 4.5% activation time adjustment. We've got a standard DPS here of 1048.81 attributable to the turrets and 35.13 attributable to the drone. Total of 1083.94. Of course, we are going to be in drone range for the most part, so that full 1083.94 is probably what we're going to be seeing most of the time. Defensively speaking, without the armor hardeners active, we are looking at 42,406, of which 12,180 is in the armor. We are capacitor stable, just below 50% capacitor stability, so again, if you really want to, you could swap out one of either the magnetic field stabilizer or one of those armor hardeners for a capacitor battery. If you're intending to go up against things that have a lot of Nosferatus or neutralizers against you, you can add a little bit extra stability, or you can go into the rigs and change some of those around for capacitor stability there. Targeting, we have a very decent scan resolution of 375, as I said, a large signature radius there of 236, and in regards to navigation, our flight velocity is a surprisingly nimble 300.3 meters per second. Warp preparation time is 5.77, so you're not going to escape a gate camp anytime soon. But then again, fingers crossed, if you jumped into a gate camp, if it's only a small amount of ships, the Brutix might actually be able to take care of them, because they're probably already in range. You lock on, you start opening fire with those snub-nose, and you just rip them to shreds. 2.7 AU per second warp speed, as I've learned, is actually fairly standard for battlecruisers. I was surprised when I saw that on the Tornado, and now I've learned that is pretty standard. Anyway, let's then have a look at the rigs. For the power grid rigs, I've gone for a railgun collision accelerator and a railgun burst aerator, your typical 1-2 punch for DPS. Nice, cheap way of making sure that your DPS is increased as much as possible. Theoretically, I think a burst aerator 3 doubled, 2 of those, does work out ever so slightly better, but it costs an awful lot more as well. For me, that additional increase just isn't worth the price tag. Then a nanobot accelerator 3 again increases the activation time, reduces the activation time, increases the speed, I was going to say, of the armor repairers. So we have an armor repairer that is cycling that bit faster, repairing that bit better. We're still maintaining capacitor stability with that armor repairer active despite the speed increase, but again, you can go for something like a bigger armor tank, one of the rigs that gives you an increase to your flat armor, or you could even go for plugging up some of the holes, like adding the an explosive resistance rig into this slot as well, especially if you're going into PvP. Now, PvP is an unusual position for the Brutix. I would argue that the Brutix works better in fleets in most situations, and it works as an excellent point defense. If you've got, say, a Guardian that you don't want the enemy ship to be targeting, or you've got somewhere that you don't want the enemy ships to sort of encroach on, you don't want them to get close to, pop a Brutix there. Ultimately, chasing people down with a Brutix is always going to be difficult unless it's other battlecruisers or battleships, but if they have to come towards you, well, suddenly the snub-nosed railgun's kicking out a monstrous amount of damage. Anyway, looking then at the mechanical rigs, Auxiliary Thrusters 3 helps us maintain that movement speed and that additional flight velocity that gets us into combat, into railgun range faster. We have a dynamic fuel valve. This, of course, reduces the amount of capacitor required to have the afterburner active, and we are intending to have that afterburner active 24/7. And then finally, a targeting system subcontroller allows us to lock on that little bit quicker, especially to smaller targets. This is because ultimately, if we're going to be going into encounters, we're going to be right up in close range, we want to be able to lock onto things quickly and obliterate them before they start doing too much damage back to us. Having the ability to lock on that little bit faster is useful for that. This rig could be swapped out for a polycarbon engine housing to give yourself the ability to orbit that little bit tighter, or indeed to just accelerate and decelerate that little bit faster. Now, I did try the Brutix out doing Bad Hair Day. I did think, you know what, let's try a Tech 10 storyline encounter. And for a while, it was going really well. I managed to do the first encounter, no problems there. I did the scanning bit. I came out here to the second encounter, where I completed the first couple of waves with no problem. I think the first, second, and third wave were no issue whatsoever, but then this third wave hit. And, well, I'm going to let this play out. Ultimately, this is the reason I've added a second adaptive armor hardener into the fit, rather than a second magnetic field stabilizer. As you can see here, I was just taking that little bit too much damage. I've got double scrams on me, I cannot outrun them, there's very little I can do, and my tank isn't supporting the incoming damage either. So if you were hoping to take this ship out into complete Bad Hair Day, well, unfortunately that's not really going to happen. You could try it with the rifled railgun fit, but again, the rifled railgun I just found wasn't as fun at all, and at which point you may as well be flying a Ferox. That said, you don't necessarily need to be going for storyline encounters. They're not always the best way to make money, nor are they the most fun. Sometimes you just need to go out and do another encounter, but hey, I thought I'd let this play out because I just wanted to showcase I do test these, and I do occasionally lose ships. There goes the Brutix. Boom. So instead then, we're going to jump into Migrant Ship Distress Call. This is a Minmatar 8.5 million ISK encounter. It's a Tech 9 encounter. It does recommend a Tech 9 battleship, but I'm going to be doing it in the Brutix, which is a Tech 8 battlecruiser, just to showcase that we can. And of course, it feels quite nice to do a Minmatar encounter in a Gallente ship, because of course, in the backstory, the Gallente Federation are old allies to the Minmatar Republic, and the Gallente helped out an awful lot during the Empyrean Age, trying to help the Minmatar get their slaves back from the Amar. They actually helped sort of build the Republic fleet, that kind of thing. There's a lot of close relations between the Gallente Federation and the Minmatar Republic. Anyway, you can see I've warped in at 0, I've locked onto my targets, and that Gisty Hound 2 went down in seconds. Couple of shots is all it took to take it out. Here we have the second Gisty Hound 2, very small signature radius on this ship, but do those snub-nosed railguns have any trouble at all there, especially with the stasis webifier on? No, they do not. We are chewing through that target straight away, bang, there it goes. Now back on to that Gistum Bellicose. Obviously here again, off we go and try and pull that Bellicose down. Now the Brutix ultimately here is kicking out a absolutely withering hailstorm of firepower. Those snub-nosed railguns do a lot of damage to these ships and pull them down really quite quickly. So I can see a lot of you looking at the Brutix already feeling disappointed that this fit can't do the Tech 10 storyline encounters. You know what? Not many ships can, and that's not all there is to the game. Ultimately, I find these encounters that little bit more fun and actually pretty equivalent in regards to the amount of ISK you can earn per hour. Yeah, okay, sure, you earn, what, 100 million, 300 million ISK from storyline encounters, but they take 4 to 6 hours to complete in some cases, and they can be stressful as all heck. Instead here, I've got an encounter that takes me half an hour, less than half an hour, it's about 22 minutes to completion on this one, that earns me 8.5 million just for the encounter itself, plus we have all of the bounty and the loot as well from it. Decent amount of ISK earned from this without half the stress that a storyline mission takes. And you're playing a video game here, folks. It's not all about min-maxing everything, sometimes you just want to have fun. And for me, jumping in an incredibly damaging ship here like the Brutix and just utterly obliterating everything with snub-nosed railguns, you know what? It's fun. I'm here looking onto a Typhoon. Yeah, it's my drone doing the work at the moment because I'm a little bit too far away, but once I get that orbit in, you'll see that the railguns really start doing the work. Ultimately, right now, it is just the drone. Wait for it. Hopefully we'll get a nice snub-nosed hit. There we are, 804 snub-nosed hit. 1241 snub-nosed hit, and now we're getting into the 1200, we're below 10 kilometers, we're getting into the actual proper range here, 2365, that is a massive amount of damage, and I'm going to see how closely we can actually maintain an orbit, 3000 per hit, and those hits are coming fast and furious. And ultimately, that's what I really enjoy about this. It's nice, it's fairly, sedate, I'm not in any major danger, but I am able to rip apart targets with impunity, and you can see there, that damage is just absolutely furious. We're through, yeah, we're getting a bit too tight now, so I'm going to pull away. We're losing some damage just from being a bit too close, just the angular velocity is a little bit too much for the snub-nose to keep up with. But again, honestly, I know it sounds like a cop-out, I know a lot of people are they only care about can it do Tech 10 storyline encounters. No, the Brutix can't if you're doing a snub-nosed railgun fit, but you just get a fun amount of brawling damage here, and if anyone else jumps into this encounter, you know what, if you're in a Ferox and you're trying to do an encounter or an anomaly or whatever in a long range build, and someone jumps in with an interceptor or a Dromiel or a Daredevil, you're boned, you're screwed. In this build, once they get close enough to start firing at me, they're close enough for me to webify, for me to scramble, and those snub-nosed railguns are fast enough to target and hit them. This makes the Brutix monstrous. It is pretty good for doing standard encounters and for doing like your anomalies, your public anomalies, because you don't have to worry too much about anyone else jumping in. And if you want to get involved in dead space anomalies, again, the Brutix is an excellent ship for that. Not doing it solo for sure, but doing it in a fleet, you're going to be kicking out a lot of damage, and you're capable of hitting even the smaller, faster faction frigates that otherwise may prove a problem to some of your friends. And quite frankly, to me, that's half the fun of Echoes. It's playing with people, not trying to solo the top-end content, but having fun with friends in anomalies and doing some content together. And the Brutix, for me, really does that well. And this has been so much fun to do. I've been playing around with the Brutix now for a couple of days, and I've really enjoyed this. I'm not normally a battlecruiser fan, but this was fun. So thank you to everyone who suggested I do a Brutix video, and for those who challenged me to try and do something with snub-nosed railguns. This, to me, I thoroughly enjoyed this. Hope you've enjoyed it too. Hopefully you'll give this a try if you're using the Brutix. Don't just fall into the whole, oh, well, rifled railguns are the best. Try the snub-nosed railguns, have some fun with it, and let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, folks. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.